and welcome to another episode of the Blue Falcon Podcast. I have the honor of being joined today by a friend of mine from New Jersey, another veteran, Mr. David Winkler, who is we talked about this, the 33rd Legislative District senatorial candidate. Did I say that right this time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Nailed it. Okay. Under pressure, I do better.
Yep.
It's that old EOD training, I guess, kicked in.
Yeah.
All right. Woo. So now we got that out of the way. David, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to come on the podcast. And I'll give you a few minutes to kind of address who you are and what you're doing over there in New Jersey. And it's really awesome to have somebody from Tennessee who's never really met you in person, but we have a lot in common and a lot of principles that we live by, not just with the veteran aspect, but politically and religiously. So I'd love to hear your platform.
Yeah. So if I were to give you guys like a little summary or bio, so I started off in the Marine Corps. I actually grew up in Orange County, California. So always knew I was going to end up in the military. Grew up around obviously the Navy, Marine Corps types over there in the West Coast. So it wasn't, as soon as 9/11 kicked off, I knew that was definitely my route to go in. So I joined the Marine Corps Infantry back in 2005. I went out to a lovely place called 29 Palms, California. Hey, I still think it's one of the best Marine Corps bases that they got. Like, people can hate on 29 Palms. I still think it's the best base that they got. Right.
That's awesome.
And so I did 2 tours with them. So I did the Fallujah deployment with 2-7, and then I went to Nowzat, Afghanistan in 2008 as part of that surge. And then I got out, went back to Orange County, and this is kind of where I started seeing it politically was, wow, they were ultra liberal. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go back into the military. Try to get back into the Marine Corps. That didn't the Marine recruiters are like, nope, sorry. But the Army recruiter was like, yeah, we'll take you again. So I was like, sweet. So I got to, go to a historic division again. So with the 7th Regiment being, historic with the Marines, I got to go over to the 101st Airborne.
Which is,
so I was quite happy to get over to Tennessee. Yeah, Campbell. And I was like, this is an amazing base. So I spent about 10 years in the Army. I went over to artillery or air defense aspect. So I did that. I didn't know what it was, but it ended up being pretty cool after a while, right? So, I got to, see a side of the military I wasn't used to seeing, from the ground and pound aspect of infantry to this side where I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. It's really technical. So I did that. And I was also an Army recruiter out in Brooklyn, New York, which is quite interesting. It was quite the challenge to get people to join the military in a really left-leaning state.
I imagine.
And then I went off to Korea, and I was like, you know what, I'm good now. I'm just going to switch over to the Guard and try to get into politics to really help out the veteran community, because I was working also in tandem. I was working as a nonprofit leader while being active duty. So I was trying to help out veterans on my out time.
Warriors with Wings.
Yeah, Wings for Warriors. So I worked with one of your Oklahoma senators, Senator Einhoff.
Oh yeah.
So I did a lot of work for invisible wounds, like traumatic brain injury was my focus, because we focus too much on PTSD, but a lot of our guys are suffering from TBI and being misdiagnosed and they're not handling that correctly. So TBI is the route I went down, and we had a lot of support across the nation to tackle TBI. So it became really big to where I had to literally make that choice of getting out, focusing on that, and focusing on, trying to be that political leader that you're not going to a staffer if you're a veteran, you're going directly to me.
Right.
Cut the middleman out. I want to hear from my veterans. Like, you always have an open door.
Yeah.
Awesome. That kind of leader. So that's what I'm trying to do here.
That's a big shout out to Mr. Tim Burch here in Tennessee. I had an issue with the VA, and I hit him up on Twitter, and sure enough, he gave me his phone number and helped me get that resolved. And that's the kind of leader that, they're very rare. Excuse me, they're very rare. But when you run across them as a veteran, it brings a tear to your eye. Like, man, this guy really is there for me.
I mean, it was the way I was as an NCO as well. It was like, hey,
That's a good way to
look,
put it.
like you got a problem, you come to me. And
Yep.
that's exactly what, my mentors taught me, rising up through the ranks, from the Marines to the Army was be that approachable leader. Never turn away your subordinate whenever they got issues. Or even your peers, or even sometimes even your, superiors need somebody to talk to. So it's the same thing as I did with the veteran community. I'm always approachable as a veteran. Like so I'd rather have you reach out to me than have something, horrible happen.
Yep. Um, let's I'm gonna go through your website real fast. I'm gonna change it over to your website. And if you would kind of give us a backstory of like when you decided to start to run, and the purpose of it. And I'm gonna click on this website and get this going for us.
Go ahead. So I was originally running for Congress. I stepped back because the coronavirus became, you know, big back in like early February, early March, and the National Guard units were standing up to go help out with coronavirus.
Right.
So I felt like my calling was more towards that than continuing to run for House at that time because I believe the people need us more than at that area right at that point in time. New York was getting hit with a lot of deaths, a lot of things affecting families over there. So I felt like that was where I was better placed at the time. I dropped back from that primary, even though I was uncontested, and I focused on that. And then I prepared myself for this. So now I'm running for the New Jersey State Senate, which is going to be a big fight in New Jersey. So it's because Governor Murphy's up for re-election.
Okay.
So you're going to see Republicans come out to challenge Murphy, as well as a slate of senatorial candidates in Assembly to hopefully win back the majority in Trenton, New Jersey. So,
and New Jersey's a very liberal state. History, right?
It's had its time where it was Republican, and that was underneath Chris Christie, being the governor. But majority of my time here in Hudson County, from what I'm seeing historically and doing the research, it's been Democrat control for about 46 years.
Oh wow.
Oh, so you got that lovely picture there.
Yeah.
So just like giving you background on that. Yeah, so I was the color guard for New York City sports. So I did all Barclays, or I mean Brooklyn Nets, Giants, Jets, Yankees, Mets, the Knicks, Rangers.
Okay.
I forget who else. I forgot the other. I think they're Islanders or whatever. So I did all those sports. Yeah. So going over it, I think that you guys are going to see that trend or see who I'm about. Like I believe in trying to bring back stability and common sense to politics. I try to take a mature approach where I will listen to the left and I'll listen to the right and just come with a pragmatic and common sense approach to politics. I'm very centric a little bit to the right, not far right. But I will tell you that's why I'm a conservative. But this polarization and us not, working together, for the betterment of America is what I'm trying to stop and get back to a place where we are all focused on putting the people first.
I see that. Yeah, this united by a common goal. That's awesome, man. I love that.
I'm tired of those politicians that, centralize their power and they just circulate it, for, money, power, and greed.
Right.
And that's just pretty much the story of Hudson County is 46-year reign of that, of, these Democrats that just circulate the power amongst themselves.
Yeah, I think maybe you'll agree with this. From what I've seen, and seeing somebody like you who's like, okay, enough with the politicization, the polarization, and the political movement of dividing the country. Let's kind of try to figure out what the common goal is on the local level, and that's also what I love what you're doing. You're focusing on your community, right?
Yeah, so I mean that's the whole strategy is I think that we don't have real representation, when we look to even at the federal levels, like everybody's out for their own individual agenda and they're not listening to the voices of the people. And to me, that's not a representative. That's not even the definition of what a representative is. Like you need to represent what the people's needs are. And take that bottom up feedback, as I would call it, even though technically it's not like that kind of chain of command structure, but taking your people's, needs and putting it into a platform so they can all, prosper. Because, I see it all the time in the House, all these people do these random things, but miss the mark on what the people are asking. And then that's why their districts look the way that they do, or they function the way they do, because they're not listening to the people.
Do you think a lot of it has to do with, I'm going to consider you in the same generation as me, but I'm really excited to see so many people in our generation step up to the plate and really see, not necessarily condemn, past actions, but say, okay, this didn't actually work in the past. Like we need, it's like you're saying, like we need to address it a different way.
And I'm one of those. Yeah, and it's like people are like, it's like being a hardcore Yankees fan versus I'm a Mets fan over here, and between the two, the red and blue, and whatever solutions we came up with are absolutely godly, like rather than being really common sense, sit back and say, hey, look, it's okay to put the pride aside. It's okay to say, hey, some policies have not worked. Let's go ahead and fix those policies and make them work. Right. Or if we need to recreate the wheel to address these issues, let's go ahead and do that. But we got to be intellectually honest with ourselves. Some policies just do not work.
And that's hard to do, even on a human level.
Yeah.
Swallowing your pride. Like for me, it's hard to do. And I'm sure you may agree with that too. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
it's
you.
definitely hard for me, but being, learning that leadership, that we've learned from the military. I mean, I think it's become a little bit easier to say, you know what, maybe my way wasn't the best way. Maybe this private over here had the best way of doing it. And I think that's that's who I was as a leader. Like, I don't have all the answers. This private, hey, shoot, he just helped me with the plan I didn't even think about.
Right.
So, it's something that, like, I think that I bring to the table is that pragmatic approach of saying, you know what, let's really take a look at the policies that we're doing here, even as a Republican, and say, hey, maybe we can fine tune it or tweak these policies to be better.
Okay. So, I have some of the, excuse me, some of the their platform things you're running on your platform. I'm going to pull these up. And let's touch on these real fast. The first one you have on here is education.
Yeah.
What is besides, I'm not asking you to read this word for word, but the education part of this. Why is this? There's four parts of this of your platform, and so what aspects of education are you really wanting to hit on?
So education, I got to take you guys back to 2019 when I began running. I went and visited a lot of local leadership, right? A lot of advocacy groups. Kind of pained me as a veteran, man, to, seeing that these people are having some struggles that we would have within our veteran community, and like that frustration that they have, that things aren't getting fixed. And my cities are $120 million underfunded at the least when it comes to schools. And then to find out on top of that the drinking water is somewhat like Flint, Michigan, where they're finding toxins in there that are leading to cancer issue in the water in August. And the mayor didn't issue a warning until a month later for a boil advisory. But what always sticks with me was there was this single mother with her kid on her lap, and she was crying at this advocacy group because she has to supply bottles of water for her kid to go to, first grade, because she can't trust the water in the school and nobody's fixing anything. To where she's even complained about the food being unedible. And this is like the common consensus here is what are they doing as a city?
Right.
That
Where's the money going
that they're
first?
not fixing. Yeah. And then you start to peel back the onion. You start to see a lot of indictments of corruption of Board of Education members, to, money going away from schools, but property taxes go up. And just a lot of issues that were just disturbing to me, to where I'm like, we got to do something now, because education is one of the most, important things for a community. And you got to be able to compete on a national level. And when you get to high school and say your high school is the best high school in the area, but then you go off to like say Notre Dame, and you're behind the power curve because your school wasn't really that great, that's what I'm trying to stop here, and I'm trying to fix it. And so, yes, I have plans for that, as well as school choice, because I have a lot of people here that would like to go to some of these better schools, but they're outside of those school districts, while the public schools are failing in their area. And I want them to just get the best education that they can. So school choice was a great, great program by President Trump and, Senator Tim Scott, to implement. One of the things that you probably heard was question 1 just got passed, or, for legalization of cannabis. So I'm looking at a lot of those, putting mandates on the taxation from that industry here in New Jersey, where 50% or at the minimum needs to go back to revitalization acts, towards helping our schools and our communities fix their broken infrastructure, to water issues, to you name it. I want to keep the Wall Street types out. I want to keep, because I don't know if you guys know this, but Governor Murphy is a former Goldman Sachs guy.
I know that.
With the legalization of marijuana, his little cronies are going to come in and try to capitalize off that billions. We have a chance to stop that and put it back in the power of the people and say, no, we're gonna fix our communities with that type of money.
But why? What other? Okay, let me ask this. This is gonna be a stupid question, but why would that not be an option? Like, why would that money not go towards the community?
So we've seen it happen. So we've seen it happen within Colorado, right?
Okay.
We've seen it happen with Oregon. We've seen it happen with Washington. If you really take a look at where all that industry's money is going to, it's going to these wealthy type people, rather than those who were affected by, let's say, the 1994 crime bill, or mass incarceration due to possession charges or distribution charges or whatever. My whole thought process is we can rectify that issue here in New Jersey and give those opportunities to those who were affected by it first.
Right.
And have them set up the dispensaries, have them run everything, because their lives were affected to a now legalized or change in the law.
Okay.
And I believe that they're the first ones that need to get that taken care of.
Well, that kind of brings into your next part of your platform, the small business.
Yeah.
So obviously, I guess we'll kind of lead into the small business with that aspect of it. Helping small the businesses with the small business aspect of cannabis. How do you think that would be? That'd be 2 birds with 1 stone, from how I'm doing the math on this, right?
It's technically, it's knocking out 2 birds with 1 stone, because here's the deal. My district is pure mom and pop stores, right? That's how we survive out here. We don't have big industry. We don't have, these big sustainable jobs that are like 50,000 starting, on up. So a lot of these people are having to pull like 2 to 3 different jobs, even though they own a small business out here, just to be able to keep up with the rent and everything else out here. And due to Governor Murphy's shutdown orders, we're seeing mass amount of businesses go underwater. And as these shutdowns continue during COVID-19. So I need to be able to boost the economy here. So one of my things is to resemble a lot of what President Trump did with the Platinum Plan, which allows a lot of these startup businesses to not have to pay, corporate tax rates. They lower them down to 0% for 5 years, 10 years, and stuff like that, right? So I'm doing the same thing here too. I need my businesses to grow. And so we need to reduce the taxes on these small businesses and allow them to rise. Later on, yes, we can look at taxation and start, leveling it back up, but we need to reduce it as low as possible so these guys can survive, as well as get them things they didn't get during coronavirus, which was like the PPP loans and stuff like that.
Right.
We need to be able to give them incentives or grants or loans to start, rebuilding their businesses. And we're going to go underwater really quickly.
What do you think is the main industry that's being affected out there in New Jersey? I just saw today where the New Jersey governor is going to shut down completely, I think, or families less than 10 people can be gathered. Is that right? There's a new restriction going into place tomorrow at 6 a.m.
So I have what's called Bergen Line in my area. So Bergen Line is just think of it like just gigantic, it goes all the way through like 3 or 4 cities, right? And it's just all mom and pop stores. A lot of them are restaurants. So the ones that are getting hit hard are these restaurants. Like they're not able to, get customers. They're gravitating towards Grubhub and a lot of these things for delivery, but it's still
that's not going to be.
It's still not helpful. It's not sustainable to go through like Grubhub or Uber Eats or anything like that, because if you look at it, the people themselves don't really have that money for Uber Eats or Grubhub and all that stuff too.
Because they work at these places.
Yeah. Right. And then you look at the average mom and pop store that's not, it's like, they're selling clothes or they're selling, some sort of hardware, or, it reminds me of being in like, the South, going to those like rural cities that have those like mom and pop stores. It's kind of like that,
but in Oklahoma.
Urban environment. Yeah. It's like being in Lawton, Oklahoma, right? Well, actually, no, because Lawton has a little bit of in there. But it's kind of like that. So it's like the second part of what I'm trying to do is bring in big business. I need to bring in, big corporate and attract big corporate businesses, something like what happened with the AOC deal. So maybe getting like an Amazon over here, or getting, big tech. I hate to say it, but bringing over Google, bringing over something that, I can bring from Manhattan over here and start, building these businesses that can give the people like $50,000 jobs starting, so they can keep up, because the rent here is highly priced for the area here that doesn't have that kind of sustainable job. So a lot of people are going to Uber on their off time, and they're driving like 6-8 hours, almost like
on top of their 8-hour job.
On top of and so it's like they're not really sleeping. It's just around the clock trying to work, just to keep up with like $2,000, to $3,000 studio apartments, or it's ridiculous.
Okay, yeah, I see that's also one of the platforms they're talking about on here is affordable housing, and you hit on the social and racial and criminal justice reform earlier with the trying to undo the 1994.
I think that's where crime. I think, and on that subject of the social justice and criminal justice reform, I think that one of the things that we did not capitalize on as Republicans is our roots are abolitionists.
Yes.
Our roots are freedoms, liberties, and or individual freedoms and all that stuff. And I think, we started seeing it with the Black conservative movement. They're very boastful about it. But we need to get the big tent underneath this and get their arms wrapped around criminal justice. I think that's where we get attacked as Republicans for not being, hugely involved into it, as well as I think it's a way to counter BLM. I think it's a strong way or their toxic behavior from BLM. I think it's a way to handle a lot of these ideologies. When I came out with that, and I don't know if you were able to see it, but when I came out with that policy for what I plan on doing for the legalization of marijuana, it silenced the left.
Oh, really?
The left could not do anything. So pretty much my tenets of that was, as I said, keeping away from the Wall Street types, keeping it away from, big corporate America, and making sure that we limit the scope of what the New Jersey government can do in that area to where it's just an oversight function.
Okay.
And then the second piece was a transition program from the big prisons to training them up in that field so they can go ahead and work within the dispensaries and work in that field. Complete expungement of records when it comes to, the past criminalization of cannabis.
So it's I want to go. For example, like when I hear that, I'm thinking that if somebody went to jail for marijuana, but now marijuana is legal, all their records for that that crime, the marijuana crime, would be expunged.
Yeah, so it's a similar thought process I had with the Army when it came to Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and what I was fighting with that, right? So remember when the not the Army, but I think it was the military in general, was like, hey, you know, if you were gay in the military, you got kicked out for that. Now that they legalized it, and now they reversed their position, you still have a large populace that is still dealing with the after effects of that.
Right.
And I believe that's wrong. I believe that there should be, relief for that, is in fixing those records and making sure that we do right by those people now. Now that they've reversed their position and made it legal. I think that it's the same way with the military. They gotta do right by the people that were affected by Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It's the same thing with this legalization of marijuana.
And that'll get a lot of the strain off of not a lot, but a significant percentage of our strain on the prison system will be relieved from this also.
And that's how they make their money, is privatized.
Yeah.
Yeah. The private system is, it's in a lot of people. I think there's a lot of local levels that benefit from sending people to jail. And I think when we're dealing in the realm of social justice and things like BLM and all that, it would take the tension off of this whole situation by, addressing the root issues and saying, hey, because there's a lot of hurt and pain, how about we rectify it and we go ahead and we expunge those records. We allow them to, not really control the business, but have a huge part into that business. And have them create that wealth that they lost over that time because they were in jail or incarcerated or whatever it is. And I think that we'll start seeing a change of, towards positive attitudes, when it comes to social justice, rather than, taking to the street and burning down businesses and doing all that. I'm being more pragmatic and saying, you know what, I heard your issues. I heard you guys' outcries. Let's go ahead and give you guys that industry that you were, affected, mostly affected by.
Do you think that is also a local level call? Because I know in some states, I'm mainly grew up in southern states, and that's not necessarily a cry that I hear. Maybe it's different people I'm talking to, but a lot of the farmers, like here in Tennessee, like I know farmers who are getting into the CBD business because they already have the agriculture set up for it. And I would be hesitant to say, like, hey, farmers, you can't get into this business because we're giving it to X, Y, and Z group. There has to be some kind of
that's not what I mean by that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not what I mean by that. So so I'm saying, hey, look, they can have, a lot of my plan doesn't rely on giving, going down that route with farmers or going down that route with, dispensaries. And from that, there's going to be billions and billions of dollars that come in from that taxation. That taxation is going to go back to revitalizing those communities, getting their schools up and, to standard, getting their communities up to standard, getting after school programs, mentorship, stuff that they needed that they've been lacking because they don't belong to these rich districts that take care of themselves, or these rich areas, right?
I agree.
So we got to level that playing field. I've always believed in true equality is giving equal access to the opportunity, not handouts.
Right.
Like, don't hand it out to them, but fixing it to where they are on par with the rest of their communities.
I don't think, and
that's what I'm trying to do.
Anybody who I've spoken to has never argued with me on this point, and so I hope you agree also. But a child raised in downtown Chicago should have the same opportunities as someone who's raised in Podunk, Oklahoma. They should have the same opportunities. Now, will that happen? Probably not. But we have to work towards that, because it's different.
And I think a lot of it, as I said, comes down to greed.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it comes down to greed is what I'm seeing here is, when I describe my area, it reminds me of like a mob, right? So
oh gosh,
these people centralize power, and they've been doing so for 46 years because they're virtually unchallenged by the Republican Party or an independent. I mean, even the far left can't even break through the wall of moderate establishment Democrats here. So they can, my incumbent is the mayor of Union City. He's also the police chief / director of his own city, on top of being the state senator.
Wait, what?
So there is no, this is what goes on in all my cities. So they have this impenetrable wall of protection.
So
So if
let me
you
get this
even
straight real
try
fast.
to,
The mayor is also the chief of police. Like, is that what you're saying?
yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I got that right. Okay,
So this is what goes on
that's crazy.
in North Jersey. So it's like, if somehow the mayor messes up, he puts on that other hat of a state senator and is like, oh, everything's fine here. We're not going to investigate me or whatever, Or even if he messes up as a mayor, he's like, oh, I got this other hat. I'm a police chief.
Yeah.
Nice try. You're not going to look into me. It's just like they just
Wow.
entertain hats whenever they want to entertain. And so it's like, what are we doing here?
Right.
And it's, to me, it's almost like that classical conditioning of voting down ballots. Like, and we got a bad habit of that across America, is the down ballot votes, rather than looking at who are we electing and what are we electing them to. And I think that we should keep a check and balance by having different. I don't care if it's an independent. I don't care if it's a Republican, really, but having something to break up that power structure here in northern New Jersey, because it's actually. I wouldn't even say communism or socialism, but it's turning into like a third world kind of state here, where there's no progression. It's just, regression. We're going back and things are looking horrible here. And so, people are comfortable here and voting for the same thing because they know that nobody else can win here.
It's kind of almost like they gave up hope, is what you're saying.
I had a guy reach out to me the other day and was like, you might as well just work alongside him, because this is why I moved out of New Jersey. And that's what people do, is they up and leave. So standing their ground, they just leave New Jersey, and then it just keeps keeps the cycle going. And I'm just one of those, is stubborn Marine, stubborn soldier that's like, you know what, no, this is my home, this is where I decided to reside.
Yeah.
This isn't going to happen in my watch. So, we'll fight together. I may lose, but hey, I'm gonna do my best to take this guy down.
You only lose if you give up. That's how I look at things. And what one part of the country is every part of the country to me. If one part of the country is suffering, it's our responsibility as American citizens to do what we can to address, and help out our neighbors, not only to my left and right neighbors, but my neighbors nationwide. And that's why, I really respect what you're doing. And I saw, Dave and I linked up on LinkedIn. I didn't mean to make that a pun, but we linked up on LinkedIn, and you had a post that went viral, and it was really surprising to me how many people were upset about it. But it was you.
I love those posts.
Man, you know how to get that LinkedIn churn machine. Like, if you want to see some people get upset on LinkedIn, this guy will post something that's non-controversial, but people will find a way to make it upsetting. But it was just a post about people praying for the president, and people just went off on that. And I think there was actually more positive feedback from that than negative, and that's what I like to see.
Yeah, I was shocked. I woke up in the morning. It was like 2-point-something million views, and I was like, "Whoa, wait a moment!" And then just seeing this amount of trolls that were attacking me. I had emails of just people cussing me out, and I was like, "Whoa, wait a moment!"
Yeah.
And all I was saying by it, because I'm a firm believer that President Trump did a lot of great things for the Black community as well as the Latino community, right? And I believe that he's done a lot. And people took issue with that picture, and it's not the first time I posted that picture. They take picture of the issue because they're like, "There's no way that the Black community can get behind the president and pray for him." And I'm like, "Yeah, there's absolutely a way that has happened." He's been very, very approachable to the Black community. He invites him to the White House. He invited me to the White House as well when it came down to Blexit doing their movement the other month. Awesome. And I was out on the South Lawn with about 2,000 Blexit members, getting to hear his speech directly from the president. If BLM wasn't so hostile, that's what I was saying. If BLM wasn't so hostile, he would have probably invited them to sit at the table and talk to them about their concerns. It's just, you got to be I mean, you got to literally want change and actually be mature about it. And President Trump will reach out to you and say, "Hey, you guys are doing great things, and I want you to sit down at the table and talk to me." That's what happened with the historical Black colleges and universities.
Yeah.
They reached out to the president, he gave him permanent funding, and that's how he is. A lot of people want to paint him out as racist, but he's really not a racist. Now he says some crazy things on Twitter that obviously I gotta be quite honest about. Where I'm like, whoa, you already know you're gonna get some clapback for what you say. And I got Republicans that will swear up and down. That was the right answer to do on Twitter. But I'm like,
yeah,
come on, President. Like
you can't control somebody. Not everybody's going to be the person we want them to be. But if they're a person,
it's the same thing with the immigration thing. Yeah, it was the same thing with the immigration thing. I had to tell people once again, like, the president's not being racist in nature. Those of us who serve the country understand what's going on in the Middle East. We understand that it's not a Muslim ban that he has. He's literally trying to protect our country from, possible Trojan horses. Even on the southern border, he was doing the right thing. And what annoyed me the most is having that conversation about the wall, right? Like, people like legitimately are like, "Oh, the wall," like, and I'm like, it's not just a wall. Like, we're like, come on, man. Like, we're not talking about the Great Wall of China. We're talking about, technology being on it. We're talking about other things that are attached to it. But everybody's like, no, it's just a wall. And I'm like, no, it's more than just a wall. There's a reason behind it.
Well, I mean, what I like about Trump, regardless of how this election comes out, you and I have our own opinions on that. I actually don't know your opinion, but I imagine similar to mine. But opinions aside of what'll happen, what I'm most proud of is to see young conservatives come together and realize that there's a missing link between reality, like our reality, and what's being portrayed on social media and, we'll call it a big media. Fox News is included. They're on my not a big fan of list. They've been on that list for a while.
Yeah, what's funny is I've been a fan of OAN and Newsmax for quite a while.
You can't
before people started switching over there. That's who I paid attention to.
Really?
Yeah. So, like, I've always been a fan of them because I've been around since or I paid attention since the beginning of OAN. And I've always watched them because they've always been a great conservative voice. Newsmax is helped us with our veterans fights. And listening to the former SMA Kenneth Preston. And allowing him to speak about the IED issue over in Afghanistan. Newsmax was on top of it. They took him real quickly and listened to what he had to say as the former SMA, alongside 2 3-star generals that were trying to tackle that issue in Afghanistan as well. So I've always been a huge fan of those two. Fox, I don't know what happened to them, but I mean, I think they're giving in to pressure.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Well, luckily, I think more and more conversations like those that you and I are having. I mean, I think I called you last week, and we were supposed to talk for 10 minutes, and we ended up being on the phone for an hour and a half, which is great. Having these kind of conversations amongst other, not only conservatives. I'm sure you talked to plenty of people who are liberal minded. But
yeah, so that's how actually I work.
Yeah, that's the only way to me on how to work. Like, we have to cut out the media and the social media stuff when it comes to boots on the ground. Like, you don't read about the Afghanistan war or watch it on the news and go put boots on the ground in Afghanistan and think you know what's going on. Like, that's a terrible idea. It's not going to work out well. Like, you have to actually be there, talk to the people, understand what's going on, and understand the assessment firsthand. And so I think that's
and I think some of our veterans remember it. I think some of our veterans remember when, like, Washington Post was over there, CNN or whatever. Actually, I have a funny story. I had Colonel Oliver North with us in 2008 doing the war stories. And, a lot of our Marines gave him slack and was like, "Hey, carry our ammo for us if you're going to go outside the wire," just messing with them and be like, "Carry this backpack." And, the old colonel's like, I've done this before you were even born, like, sit down, private, or sit down, corporal, or, like, it was quite funny to have Oliver North. But the only love I can give CNN was one of the reporters actually saved one of the Marines' lives, back in that time frame. And that was a totally different CNN versus what I'm seeing now. And that was the story that I think a lot of people missed in 2008. There was a CNN reporter that saved one of our Marines' lives in an IED attack. So yeah, that was quite interesting. But usually media has always gotten it wrong. I would watch what they would say over there, and then in reality, what's really going on is like totally something different. And so I've never really been a fan of mainstream media like that, because they twist words. And New York Times was one of them that did that to our Marine battalion 3 times now. There's a reporter named David Phillips. It was the first article was in like 2015 about the amount of suicides my battalion had, and they pissed off a lot of our Marines. And they did it again, a few years later, and then they just recently did one about political division, ruining the relationships with our veteran community, and they used our Marine battalion again. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
like, you're not even asking us.
Yeah, that's not right. Well, he gets the Blue Falcon of the Year award. David Phillips does. That's part of the Blue Falcon podcast.
I would give it to Don Lemonhead.
Don Lemonhead.
I'd give it to Don Lemonhead and Como, and dude, I would even give it to Governor Murphy and good old De Blasio.
Oh man, we got a lot of Blue Falcon awards going out on this episode. I love it. That's great.
As New York would say, the donkey of the day.
The donkey.
With Charlemagne the God, a lot of these guys are donkeys of the day.
Oh, that's great. Well, let's wrap it up on a good note. 2020 is slowly closing, and through all this turmoil, you're a leader, and I know you probably have a lot of times in your life when you've given I guess inspirational speeches. I'm not asking for an inspirational speech, but I am asking you for what's one positive thing you've seen come out of this year and going forward into 2021 that you hope we carry from this year.
So one of the things I would say is exactly what you alluded to, was the young conservatism that I'm seeing is absolutely amazing. I've been blessed to be a part of the Blexit movement and getting to see young leaders like Candace Owens, getting to see Brandon Tatum, getting to see ABL, a lot of these YouTube influencers, rally the conservatism and give them a voice. Right. A sense of not having to fear or hide because you're conservative, amongst the day and age where you lose your job, you lose your family, you lose your friends over being conservative. And they give that hope, that morale boost. It definitely gave me a morale boost to say, hey, you know what? If they're fighting, I'm fighting. Okay. And, they're civilians. And, as a veteran, I'm going to rally behind these troops of these young conservatives and keep them focused, keep them going and keep them pushing forward, because I believe truly that this new young conservatism is going to be the new Republican Party, to be quite honest, the way that we act and the way that we think. And I think that's what we needed. Out with the old and kind of in with the new updated version of the Republican Party that, is really killing it on policy. I think that, we missed the market with the older generation, because it worked then, right. But things adapt with time. And I think that I can't wait to see what, the Kim Klasiks of the world are going to do next year, to Joe Collins in California, to, some of these young minority leaders. I think even Candace said she may drop a candidacy.
What?
Bryson Gray, who is he calls himself MAGA Gang. He does all this rap. He's like, I'm dropping it in. Right. But I think what you're going to see is the conservatism is just going to keep growing. And I think it scares the Democrat side. But I will tell you that in these inner cities, you give us 4 years to work with in inner cities, and you're going to see a huge chunk of black votes start going towards Republicans. And that's something that hit me, was we're starting to go back to our roots. Mm-hmm. Right. A lot of people don't understand, but we're going back to the Republican Party.
Yep.
And I think that's the most exciting thing is, seeing these Lincoln style Republicans, constitutionalists, and seeing, the Frederick Douglass types, the W.E.B. Du Bois, the Booker T. Washington types come out of the woodwork and say, you know what, enough is enough. of these big socialized programs and more of, individual liberties, rights, and limited government. And I'm loving having these intellectual conversations with, minorities are like, you know what, I had enough of that Democrat Party, we're like, come over to the big family over here, and just
right, because we are a big family.
Just seeing it's a great feeling too. It's like literally like a family. There's no judgment, or there's none of this, white privilege thing or talk that the left is talking about. There's none of that, whatever. Everybody, like, seeing everybody of every identity, including even the LGBT community, getting in there, to you name it, and saying, you know what, this is us. And
if you love America, I love it. I love you. If you love America, and if we love each other, we can work this thing out. I promise.
And I will give you an inspirational thing. The Pledge of Allegiance is coming back to our high schools in New Jersey if I get elected, and so they will do that again. So, Amen. And like I got all the police happy about that. So they're like, they did the whole standing ovation thing, and I was like, no, I'm not, joking. Like, we will start to be patriotic again. Yeah, this is for real. Like, we're gonna start acting like Americans and not whatever we've been doing.
That's awesome. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I really hope that maybe in a couple months or a few weeks, if you want to come back on the podcast and drop in, let us know how things are going in New Jersey. I know all my audience would love to hear it.
Oh, thank you, sir. And thank you for having me again.
Yes, sir. And I included David's website in the links in the description, so you guys be sure to check that out. And everybody have a great day and stay safe. God bless America.
Take care.
All right. Bye.